Welcome back to Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup action. The picturesque Northwest, the venue for the round 9 and 10 of this championship quest in the MX-5 Cup Series. Mark James happy to be joined by Tony Laporta. And Tony, people join us as the cars are leaving the paddock, rolling out onto the grid, the championship chase. I'm not saying it's close, Tony, but positions 1 through 5 separated by just 12 points coming into this doubleheader weekend.
You know, you didn't say it's close, so I'll say it for you. The championship is wildly close right now heading into the penultimate weekend. This round 9 of 12 getting ready to head out onto the track. And you said it, Mark, 5 drivers separated by 12 points. Robert Stout, Brian Ortiz, Celine Roland, Michael Carter, and Robert Noaker, the 5 drivers that are fighting for that $200,000 ND2 Mazda scholarship. They all start inside the top 6 positions here in race 9 of the season.
It's interesting to note that typically you finish, in first place. The old adage is the points are going to take care of themselves. But I think because of the fact that it's so very, very tight, and there's been so much parity throughout the course of this season, I think the key is finishing on the podium. I mean, if there's 1 or 2 weekends in which you fail to finish on the podium in just one race, it can make the difference between winning or losing a championship. It's just that close.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Consistency is key, whether it's calling the NTT IndyCar Series. You guys know that through the Road to Indy, and even here at the Mazda Road to 24, you must finish to complete a championship season. Every race you have to finish, and you have to finish well if you want to win a championship. Robert Stout is coming on like gangbusters. He just picked up a win at our last round of competition, round 8, back at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. He gets his first career pole in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup. It's his first of the season, first of his career. His dad and him are thinking, wow, we're coming on at the exact right time. That McCumbee McAleer Racing driver is definitely one to watch as he'll lead him to the green flag here shortly.
On the other hand, a driver that had a really strong first half of the season was your points leader going into Mid-Ohio. Didn't have a very good weekend in Lexington, Ohio. We're talking about Drake Kemper. Good news is, Tony, he minimized the damage because of the fact that he had such a strong first half, first maybe 3/4 of the season. He's just 7 points back in 5th place.
That's the thing about this, Mark. You talk about how close competition on track in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup is. It allows you to have a bad weekend and still be okay because you can make a lot back up really quickly. Yes, you're right. He did have a bad weekend at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. He didn't have a great day yesterday. We didn't really know it. He had transponder difficulties the entire pair of 30-minute practice sessions yesterday. And then qualifying looked really good for him at the start of the day early this morning at 8:30 when they rolled out for their 20-minute qualifying session. But it didn't really go the way he wanted. He fell from the top spot where he was early, tumbled all the way down to P8, which is where he'll roll off for this one today. Luke Oxner, who scored a win here 1 year ago, tells us that it's hard to pass here at Portland International Raceway, so qualifying was his focus getting here this weekend. Kemper comes from 8th on the grid. It'll be interesting to see what he can do from that spot.
Nick Yeoman's on pit road, another member of our broadcast crew today. Nick, tell us more about this fabulous 1.9-mile facility in Portland.
Yeah, 12 turns for these drivers to navigate today. It is actually the smallest racetrack that the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup visits throughout the course of the season. Picture perfect weather throughout the course of this weekend. Right now, 77 degrees as they start to stack up on the back straightaway, getting ready to go green. And Mark, we talked about it, top 5 separated by 12 points. What exactly does that mean? Well, Robert Noaker made up 33 points in the doubleheader at Mid-Ohio, so there is a lot on the line as we're set to go racing in Portland.
Robert Stout, Brian Ortiz on the front row, Celine Roland, Gresham Wagner, row 2, Michael Carter, Robert Noaker. The top 10 completed by Luke Oxter, Drake Kemper, Brian Lockwood, and Zach Green. Speaking of Green, they come off the final turn. Always a beautiful, picture-perfect formation. The MX-5 Cup underway at Portland, and as they always do, they fan out 4-5 wide behind the front couple of rows. A drag race. Looks like Robert Stout, Tony, is going to win the race into turn number 1 and grab the top spot.
Stout did exactly what he had to do right there, Mark. He got out in front. He was able to clear the field behind him, and he covers them as they make their way through the festival. Turns 1, 2, now the right-hander 3. And everybody, unlike last year, seems to have gotten through that tight opening chicane cleanly. They're off in 4. Robert Stout's your leader.
Celine Roland is going to grab a firm grasp on that second spot now as they head to one of the fastest portions of the racetrack. We're talking about that long back straightaway The number's about 2,200 feet in length, 2180 to be specific. From a technical standpoint, Tony, some of the big news going into this race weekend involving the ECUs with these cars.
Yeah, so Mazda Motorsports and the folks that officiate this series, it's a great crew. Keith Dalton, series manager, leads up in a fantastic technical staff. They decided to do everything they can, just as they do every weekend, to keep the technical disparity at an absolute minimum. They want to keep the field as close as possible as Roland makes a great move at the end of the back straightaway. Roland now gets around Stout. He's going to try to be the first driver back to complete the opening lap, and it looks like he's going to be able to do so. But the tech staff here at Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup through the top 5, a absolute curveball. They pulled the ECUs out of the cars and gave them brand new ones that these teams have not had a chance to manipulate or work on or set up, because that's the whole point of MX-5 Cup racing, Mark. It's bare bones. Race the car as it's delivered to you by the folks at Long Road Racing. So you've got cars out there working with electronic control units that they've never had in their cars before. And to say it's going to change things, I don't think is fair, but it's just going to prove how much this series works on keeping the playing field as level as possible.
Top 5 after lap number 1, Celine Roland, Robert Stout, Brian Ortiz, Gresham Wagner, and Luke Oxner, your top 5. Carter, Lockwood, Kemper, Nowaker, and Alex Basher are the top 10. Let's talk a little bit about Robert Nowaker. Another impressive weekend for him at Mid-Ohio. He repeated the sign of his first win of the series from the year previous. He did bobble a bit on the start here, though. He's tumbled back to 9th, but this guy just has can't miss star written all over him.
Absolutely, and I know Dave First did a really great story on Robert Nowaker back when we were in Lexington, Ohio, and Nowaker's a really cool cat, man. He's a young kid. He's grown so much in just the year and a half, basically, that he's been with the series. Mo Murray and I talked about it a lot during practice. He is in the midst of his sophomore season here in the Global MX-5 Cup Championship as drivers spit a little bit of dust exiting that final corner. Boy, Robert Stout has a great run out of that final corner. We'll see if he can do anything to Roland. He pulls out, and Roland's going to get kind of hung out to dry here, and then they're also going to go 3 wide down into that final corner. So that's the 4 of Brian Ortiz, your championship point leader. Hard on the brakes on the inside. He clips that inside apex, and he's through. Boy, Roland's going to go for a spin in 2 after contact with Oxner. Roland sitting in the middle of turn 2. That is not what he needed for the championship.
He is watching the entire field roll by him before he can begin to get back underway. Celine Roland, Tony, came into this race 2 points back of the championship leader, Brian Ortiz, and he sits and watches the entire 24-car field race past
And
him.
he now just finally gets that car refired, pushes the clutch in, and regains the ability to continue back on the track. That was insane. You're exactly right, Mark. That's the last thing that he needed coming into this weekend. In the championship, as tight as it is right now, you know, we try not to make a big deal out of it, as we've also got a car off the 42, finds a little bit of the infield grass through turns 4 and 5. Gets it going again, but that's huge right there. That might just be the story of this race, is Celine Roland going for a spin on the end of lap number 2 and falling all the way out of the top 5. He's dead last on the track right now. That is certainly going to help Drake Kemper, Brian Ortiz, and the rest of that championship top 5 breathe just a little bit easier.
So Mo Murray from Mazda Motorsports joins us in the booth for this race weekend, as always. And Mo, we talk about the technical alliance and the partnerships with the BF Goodriches and the Battery Tender Global MX-5 series as we watch the replay. Mo, we'll get to you in a minute, Tony. It just looks like 3 guys going for the same piece of real estate, and it looked like Roland was the big loser in that.
Yeah, in that red, black, and white car, that was Gresham Wagner, who's down on the inside right here. This is such a great shot right here, as you can see him make their way through turn 1 into turn 2. And so Roland tries to avoid Gresham Wagner down on his left side, Mark, and when he starts to come back to the right to avoid Gresham Wagner, he doesn't realize that the 77 from White Racing, Luke Oxner, is there. No fault of Luke Oxner's at all. No fault of anybody's. It's just hard racing getting down into an extremely tight portion of the course, and Roland's got nowhere to go. Oxner can't get on the brakes quick enough, and Roland is the big loser in that one.
Oh, by the way, we referenced earlier some of the drivers talking about how tough it is to pass here. We've had 94 passes through just a couple of laps, so yeah, it's really difficult to try to improve your position here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
A crazy play. 94 passes in just a couple of laps. We're back to Bo Murray now. But we talked about all of the technical alliances, and one of the ones that we haven't talked about yet, maybe we mentioned it a time or two earlier in the year. You know, we mentioned, I've mentioned in the past the fact that young drivers have the advantage in the NTT IndyCar Series paddock of veterans from the sport and guys that have retired from racing still staying close to it. A former driver, I think very popular driver, a guy that was good in all forms of motorsports. Let's talk a little bit about Max Pappas and the innovation steering wheel design that he has provided for the series and his involvement and his love for MX-5 Cup racing.
You're absolutely right, Mark. I just talked to Max just a few minutes before we went on the air. He's a great guy who has such a rich history in motorsports. He's driven pretty much everything. He serves as one of the stewards of the series. He once in a while, we did it at Road America, he'll assemble all the drivers together, or rather race control will assemble all the drivers together if we feel they need a talking to from somebody with his level of experience. And the words that come out of his mouth, they're poignant and very direct and meaningful to these young drivers. They look up to Max and they enjoy his involvement in the series. More directly, MPI, his company, provides the steering wheels for these cars, but also there are other components in development, and Max recognizes, as somebody who really favors or promotes driver development, he recognizes that as far as developing young drivers is concerned, this series is one of the best there is, and has aligned himself with the series. So it's been a great association with MPI, Max's company, and just, you know, as a race fan coming to these races and getting to spend time with people like Max Pappas, having watched him race in everything from Formula One to IndyCar to NASCAR to sports cars. He's very, very accomplished and a great guy.
Well, Tony, race control didn't care for the role that the 77 of Luke Oxner played in that incident involving one of your championship contenders, Celine Roland. We see the 77 rolling down pit road.
That's surprising, and I'm never going to be one of those guys that second guesses what race control does, especially when you have the race control staff that we do here in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup. It's the exact same race control as the NTT IndyCar Series, featuring Kyle Novak as the series race director. But we see it right here. Luke Oxner, former winner here 1 year ago, serving his drive-through penalty. While it's a surprise to me, I'm not saying it's the wrong decision in the slightest. Race control sees a lot of stuff that we don't see necessarily. Unfortunate for Luke Oxner, especially since he showed great speed here all weekend. But he's got another race coming up tomorrow. He can give it another shot, thankfully.
37 minutes remaining in this race, and we can give you the top 10 as they stand right now. Ortiz, Stout, Wagner, and Carter. Lockwood, the top 5. Kemper, 6th. Nowaker, 7th. Zach Lee is 8th. Bachara is 9th. And Hall is 10th here at Portland International Raceway.
Find inspiration in every mile. The Mazda CX-5 with turbo. Feel alive.
Your vehicle's battery is probably the last thing on your mind. Until it isn't. When a vehicle isn't used regularly, or a battery is disconnected, the battery will lose up to 1% of its charge every day, eventually leaving you with a dead battery. Battery Tender's smart chargers monitor, charge, and maintain the batteries of your non-daily drivers and ensure your vehicles are ready to go whenever you are. Visit batterytender.com to select the smart charger that is right for you.
Who's got the ponies? It will be Mazda again, and across the line, it's 3 in a row for Mazda Team North.
Are you the youngest member of the family racing now?
I am.
How old?
I'm 21 years old.
21, okay.
Yeah.
One thing I think is cool about racing is men and women both compete equally.
The car doesn't know who's behind the wheel, so I'm going to drive it just as fast as the guys out there, hopefully faster.
Kid's good.
Jay Leno, Lonnie Unser, Wednesday, September 4th, CNBC. Of course, Jay Leno's Garage, and what an opportunity, not only, Mo Murray, for that young lady, but most importantly, it's an opportunity to promote this series. And Jay Leno, obviously a gearhead, a car guy. I think he had a lot of fun.
He did. I was fortunate enough to be there when they filmed that episode of that segment, and he loved driving the MX-5 Cup car. They went out in the street car, as you saw, and spent the day with Lonnie, who's such a great ambassador, not just for Battery Tender MX-5 Cup, but for motorsports in general. She was great on camera, and Jay loved driving the car. So tune in 10 p.m. Eastern Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday on CNBC.
And let's remind people, that might have seen her race earlier this year, she's making a very calculated decision in terms of what her racing future holds. Explain why we will see her in a car again in the 2020 campaign.
That's correct, Mark. So there are rules in the series that drivers who want to compete for the Rookie of the Year class, which carries a $75,000 prize, can only have done in prior years a certain number of Battery Tender MX-5 Cup races. And Lonnie did 4 races earlier in the year, and that's the number. If she had done any more, she would not be eligible for Rookie of the Year status in 2020. She chose to step away and work on putting a budget together for a full season budget together for next year. Word is that progress on developing that budget is going very, very well. And when the time is right, we welcome Lonnie back into the series, where she'll have the capacity and the eligibility to run for Rookie of the Year status next year.
I have told Dad Johnny that he did a good job with her. What a charming young lady for sure, and a steely competitor inside the cockpit of a race car. No surprise there. I think genetics mandate that, but we had the opportunity to spend some time with her in the booth at Road America earlier this year, and we wish her well moving forward and are excited to watch her career as it progresses. Let's head to pit road, check in with Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, Mark, so we're kind of keeping an eye on those drivers towards the back of the pack, the championship contenders like Celine Roland and Luke Oxner that were involved in the early race incidents. Roland has only made up a couple positions. He's up to 21st. Oxner is back in 22nd after serving that drive-through penalty. The fascinating thing about that, Mark, is those were the 2 drivers that scored race wins here a year ago at Portland. And, of course, those races were also plagued by early race incidents, so it's amazing how the shoe all of a sudden is on the other foot. And I want you guys to keep an eye on that battle for third between Gresham Wagner and Michael Carter. Those 2 obviously battling for the final step on the podium, but they are also battling for the Rookie of the Year honors. Michael Carter comes into this weekend 6th in points. He's got a 21-point advantage over Gresham Wagner from 6 Sideways Racing, and of course $75,000 on the line for that Rookie of the Year battle. And those 2 drivers right there in that lead pack battling for third.
Ortiz, Stout, Wagner, Carter, Lockwood, the top 5. Nowaker, Kemper, Bachelor, Lee, and Hall, the top 10. We do want to remind people that Tony Laporta, there are indeed 2 classes that are competing here this weekend, and John Dean has owned one of them. He leads the guy that he's been battling for that championship with, Hernan Palermo. Palermo has but 1 win on the season. John Dean came very, very close to sweeping this season in his class.
Mark, you took the words right out of my mouth. John Dean shows the way right now in the ND1 category, and Mo can do a much better job explaining the categories than I can, but essentially there's ND1 and there's ND2 out on the track. The ND1 is the older generation of the MX-5 Roadster that the race car is obviously based on and inspired by. ND2 is the more modern 2019 model year MX-5 that has been turned into an MX-5 Cup Roadster. John Dean has decided to stay in ND1, the older generation race car, along with guys like Hernan Palermo and one of the girls. We just got done talking about Lonnie Unser. Well, the other young lady that we're very happy to have racing with us, Sarah Montgomery. I have given her the nickname of the Red Dragon this weekend. I don't think she loves the nickname, but right now she is putting up a very fierce fight in the 3rd position. She looks great right now, sitting 13th overall, 3rd in class, and they're chasing down John Dean, who has dominated this season, but there's still 4 races to go.
30 minutes remaining in this session, as a matter of fact. They've completed 9 laps. We've had a couple of lead changes, 3 race leaders. We're up to 119 total passes. Big news this week in terms of solidifying plans for the future for Sarah Montgomery, Mo, as some sponsorship announcements were made by her and her race team earlier this week.
Sarah, a great young lady, great part of this this program. There she is on your screens now. This is her 3rd year, I believe, in the series. She's in ND1 class. She's running 3rd. if the race were to finish now and she steps on the podium, she would in fact be the first female driver to stand on a battery tender MX-5 Cup podium ever. So let's hope she can hang on to that through the duration of this race. But one of the things that's important about Sarah's program for the balance of this year, we have 2 weekends left, and going into next year, is she has a new sponsor on board. Obviously, finding the funding to go racing is something that's critically important for all forms of motorsports, and Sarah was successful in bringing a company called Team One Logistics. They're a logistics company focused mostly on the oil and gas business, and they've come on board to support Sarah through the tail end of this year with an eye on next year, and we welcome them to the series. It's great having new sponsors in the series, and they've certainly picked the right driver and the right time to align themselves with Sarah and her Six Sideways team, John Dean's Six Sideways team, as she's running as strong today as she has done all year.
Well, Carter Wheaton, we see the rookie, the 22 car of Wheaton, Nick. He's come to pit road left front, and it appears to be the focus.
Yep, looks like it's going to be a quick pit stop, as they are going to change just the left front tire. In fact, that the entire tire is kind of ripped off the rim of that BF Goodrich tire. So it's going to be a quick pit stop for Wheaton, who had a nice qualifying effort yesterday, starting in the 16th position. The work looks like it is done on that machine, and that 22 machine for the Atlanta Speedworks team will head back out onto the racetrack.
Luke Oxner, after that drive-through, has picked up a couple of positions. He's up to 21st, keeping our eye on Celine Roland, Tony. In that Indy 2 class, he has worked his way up to 16th. And when you're battling for a championship and you fall to the rear of the field, each and every position you can pick up throughout the course of the race is so very, very important.
Yes, you're exactly right about that, Mark. But we just got done talking about the fight for the podium in ND1. John Dean, Hernan Palermo, Sarah Montgomery, and now Nathaniel Sparks. All 4 of those drivers are the top 4 in ND1, as there's a great shot of John Dean. He's going back and forth. It looks like Palermo has actually worked his way into the lead position for ND1. But as we talk about those 4 cars battling for the race lead and the podium in their separate category, ND1, which of course has a $100,000 Mazda scholarship on the line to the champion in that category, which Palermo leads on track right now. Dean leads the championship. But all behind them, they currently run in the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th positions. And then boom, as you just said, Mark, 16th is currently occupied by Celine Roland. I tell you all that about the ND1 drivers to tell you this. Roland, if he's smart and quick, will get by all those ND1 drivers. But those are 4 cars that are not going to help him in the championship battle. Those do not affect his championship standing and will not help him gain points as he pursues Brian Ortiz, Robert Stout, Michael Carter, and the other ND2 champions. So yes, passing cars is good, it's great, but those 4 cars ahead of him right now are not going to help him at all. He needs to get through them as quickly as possible and keep passing ND2 racers.
Nick Hillman.
Yeah, the only problem for Celine Roland is that is a big gap. As you just saw, they made their way down the front straightaway. He was 7.5 seconds behind Nathaniel Sparks on the racetrack. He was able to claw into about a second. So again, if he keeps up that pace, he's certainly going to catch those guys. But that's the problem, Tony and Mark. It is going to take time, as Celine Roland's got about a 6-second gap just to move into the top 15 here.
Talk about a gap. How about a gap with the top 5, Tony, and what they've been able to stretch it out to? Ortiz is your leader. Stout, Gresham, Wagner, Michael Carter, Lockwood. The top 5 are locked together. We see them fan out a little bit as they head down the back straightaway. Now they'll get back single file again going into the final series of turns.
And it was a great point that Robert Stout's dad, Ken Stout, really well-known motorsports announcer himself, but works as Robert's spotter here on MX-5 Cup weekends, talked about, as there's a great battle for the lead. It's not on your screen right now, but Hernan Palermo and John Dean are absolutely getting after it coming down at the end of this lap they're on right now. But when you see those cars pull out, Michael Carter working on Gresham Wagner right now down on the end of the front straightaway into turn 1. Carter isn't going to have too much of a fight, or is he? As Wagner holds strong on the outside of the track, bends back to the left. Carter and Wagner going door to door through the festival turns. Carter finally wrestles 3rd position away from Gresham Wagner. But a point of interest that I found out about is when you see some of these cars, Mark, pull out and take a look to the inside, it's not always them necessarily setting up a pass. They're trying to get air on the nose of that car, because as Mo talked about, these new ND2 2019 model cars have a bigger engine. They have had some updated cooling work done to them, but they still need as much air to the front nose of those cars as possible. So if you see Stout or Carter or Wagner pull out from behind the leader, they're not necessarily looking to dive bomb and make a pass. They're just trying to cool down that Mazda engine as much as possible before they get on the brakes.
3rd through 5th slugged it out through 1st, 2nd, and the 3rd and the 4th turn. That allowed Ortiz and Stout to separate a little bit. Now suddenly we see those top 5 start to gather back up again. about the difference between the ND1 and the ND2, Mo Murray will talk about the specifics from 2016 to 2018. This ND was the primary car. ND1 was the primary car in this series, with the biggest, most notable change going to the ND2 would be the change from horsepower from 155 to 181.
That's correct. That's the biggest. There's very few noticeable changes on the outside of the car. So for folks here watching the race or watching on TV, the way to tell the cars apart, the ND1 cars, which were based on the 16, 17, and 18 model years of this 4th generation Mazda MX-5, the ND1 cars with 155 horsepower have a red windshield banner across the top of the windshield with battery tender in beautiful yellow lettering. They have a red windshield banner. For 2019, Mazda upgraded the MX-5, gave it more horsepower. It's the same size engine, but gave it more horsepower, 181, so 26 more horsepower. And the red line went up. It revs to now about 7,500 RPM. And those cars are ND2. That's your championship battle at the front of this field. And they have a black windshield banner with battery tender across it. So for the fans watching at home or here at the track, you can tell by the windshield banner which class they're competing in. And of course, ND2, the top class here, has a $200,000 scholarship prize at the end of it. ND1 has a $100,000 scholarship prize at the end of it.
There's also an updated computer system on this ND2 car, and this is a benefit to the teams in terms of how they set these cars up.
Well, there's many parts on the car are sealed. The engines, for example, are sealed. These are exactly stock, exactly the same engines that are in the production cars available at Mazda dealerships throughout the country. And the engines are sealed. You can't get in and modify or change the engine at all. And there are several other sealed components. The purpose of that is we want to maintain parity in the series. We want the car that's running at the front of the field to be absolutely identical to the car that's running at the back of the field, and the difference would then be the driver, because we really believe that this is a driver development series. There are areas where drivers can or teams rather can influence the performance of the cars. We see Celine Roland going past both Sparks and Sarah Montgomery, clearing 2 of those ND1 cars. Suspension is one of those areas where the teams have some room to maneuver, some room to adjust. The diff is a possible area for change. Transmissions are not. ECU is not. The ECU is a sealed or spec unit in the car. And so the thrust of the series, or the philosophy of the series, is to not overwhelm the drivers and the teams with a whole host of things they can adjust and therefore get lost. Because remember, this is sort of entry-level pro, or this is people who race in this series are learning motorsports, so we don't want to overwhelm teams and drivers with too many adjustments, and that's the way we manage the series with sealed components like the engine.
Top 5 been pretty definitive throughout most of this race, Tony, but I get a sneaking suspicion that Robert Noaker in that black and white 13 car running in the 6th position, he is flinging that thing around the racetrack in an effort to catch that top 5 and play along with these guys.
Yeah, and just a moment ago, we saw him flash across the screen with the fastest lap of the race. Carter just clicked off a lap time of 1:26.57, and that is quicker than the 2 cars in front of him. Carter in that soul red Mazda, he wears those colors because he is a Mazda scholarship driver. He won the Mazda scholarship shootout this past offseason, and he is racing with Mazda scholarship money. He's trying to reel down the 2017 Rookie of the Year, Robert Stout, who started this race on the pole position, and they have all got their sights set on Brian Ortiz, the driver who led the championship coming into this weekend and is doing his best to continue to strengthen that championship lead. But yes, Mark, I agree with you. We are just at 20 minutes to go right now in this race, and business is about to pick up very shortly, I think.
Mo Murray, more on Ortiz.
Brian Ortiz, one of the well, obviously a front runner in this race and a championship contender as the season winds down. Brian hails from Puerto Rico and flies into all of these races from Puerto Rico. And typically, when we live stream these races, we get a big audience in Puerto Rico on the island watching Brian, watching his Bea Motorsports team compete in this Mazda battery tender Mazda MX-5 Cup Series. We fully understand if nobody in Puerto Rico is watching, tuned into the race today, because obviously we hope they dodged a bullet with Hurricane Dorian taking a turn at the last minute and missing a direct hit on the island. But certainly they have their hands full with other things, and we wish everyone in Puerto Rico well, particularly as Brian Ortiz is leading the race here, representing the island exceptionally well.
17 laps completed. Time-wise, we're under 20 minutes now. 2 lead changes, 3 race leaders, but more importantly, from the top 5 on back, they've been slugging it out. 141 total passes. Ortiz, Stout, Carter, Wagner, Lockwood, the top 5. Nowaker, Camper, Bachara, Enzer, and Zach Lee, the top 10. I suppose next in the crosshairs for Celine Roland would be the rookie Ryan Hall, Tony. He is the next driver of that Indy 2 class, but first Roland has to get around Palermo and Dean, who are battling it out, just going after it, taking turns at the point in that Indy 1 class.
Exactly. There's the shot for the battle for the lead right there. John Dean has the position, but that white car with the green and black graphics on the hood belongs to Hernan Palermo. He scored a victory back at Road America at the halfway point of the season. That's a great shot right there of how close the fight is. Those two are racing for the lead here on track in the ND1 category. John Dean has the spot now. Hernan Palermo wants it right behind him. You talked about Celine Roland trying to claw his way back up in ND2. Then it's Nathaniel Sparks, who has worked his way around teammate Sarah Montgomery. Sparky currently stands on the podium as it runs right now. One driver dropping a few tires, getting onto the back straightaway through turn 7, but is able to keep it going. I want to talk about the car that we see running 5th right now. At the tail end of this long line mark, it's that bright orange and black machine of Brian Lockwood in the number 43. I don't remember a weekend so far in 2019 that Lockwood's run this high. It's certainly a banner weekend for the driver in the 43, and it's a banner weekend in more ways than just how well he's running. He has kept that thing out of the wall on multiple occasions, including a spin earlier this morning in qualifying, that he still ended up qualifying, I believe, 9th when it was all said and done. And yesterday in practice, he got sideways both sessions, different times all around the track. So that car has been bad loose, bad to handle. He's had a new clutch upgrade put into it. They've been working on that. But he is driving phenomenally right now. He's trying to find his way around Gresham Wagner for P4, but Lockwood having a banner weekend here in Portland.
Dust bobs seemingly going off all over the course as these drivers are really flinging it around, and you got to give a lot of credit, Bo Murray, with what these drivers put these BF Goodrich tires through. I mean, my goodness, they are just so very, very durable, and I think they combine with these cars to provide just some outstanding racing.
Well, we love the tires that BF Goodrich provides us. Of course, BF Goodrich has a fantastic history in off-road racing, and maybe those learnings are coming to the fore here when they put wheels off into the dust here. It's a little bit like Baja when they get into those big dust clouds. But yes, BF Goodrich have been a great partner and provide very raceable tires. One thing to note as we look at the top 4 here, both Brian Ortiz and Robert Stout in 1st and 2nd are championship contenders, but the car in 3rd place and the car in 4th place, Michael Carter and Gresham Wagner, not championship contenders, and also both looking for their first win in the series. Michael Carter as a scholarship driver, so he's been hungry and he's been knocking on the door all year. And as we get down, with not much time left in this race, only about 4 minutes, is Michael Carter or Michael Carter and Gresham Wagner going to let the championship contenders have at it, or are they going to stick their nose in and try and win a race?
Nick Yeoman, you're on pit road with a guy that, quite frankly, he's one of those that if it's had wheels and a motor over the last 20 years or so, he's either driven it or been associated with it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Chad McCumbee knows his way around motorsports. You're keeping your eye on Robert Stout. We're all wondering, when is he going to make that move, but how impressive have you been with his drive today?
I don't know. Robert's done a great job all year, and that's the reason we're in position to win this championship. And just biding our time. These races come down to the wire. It's amazing racing. The draft plays such a big part of it, but you just got to be smart and hopefully separate yourself as much as you can, so there's not too many variables. But I'm sure they'll make it down to the wire. There's not any plan necessarily. It's whatever the race dictates and what it hands you. But hopefully we can end up with a solid top finish and move on to tomorrow.
They usually do. It's always tight at the front. Let's talk a little bit about this series, because you guys are one of the premier teams. You've been involved in this sport for quite a while. What is it that you like so much about this MX-5 racing?
Well, it's the best value that's in sports car racing, and you know what John Doonan and Mazda put together, and these cars built by Long Road Racing. It's you know, there's no better place to learn, no better place to become a talent to move up into the higher levels. If you can win in this series, I feel like you can go anywhere and win. And we've been very fortunate to win a championship and a tremendous amount of races over the last few years. And but so we're always as good as our last race, so always want to go for that next one.
All right, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And again, Chad McCumbee from McCumbee Racing, keeping an eye on that battle up front, the front 5 mark. They've got a 3.3 second lead over the rest of the field. Keep waiting to see if Robert Stout is going to catch up to Brian Ortiz and make a move for the lead.
Interestingly enough, Tony, with under 15 minutes remaining in this race, Ortiz, Stout, Carter, Wagner, and Lockwood, the top 5, the 2 guys that got together early on in the race. One of them fell to the rear of the field as a result. The other went to the rear of the field via penalty. Celine Roland and Luke Oxner have found one another again.
Yeah, that's the best part. That's the best part about the parity that you see in Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup racing is you're not going to get away from each other for too long if there's an issue on track. You said it perfectly. Oxner had to serve a drive-through penalty as a result of the contact that took Celine Roland out of the battle for the race lead. While Roland has been steadily clawing his way through the field, he currently runs in 14th. Well, right there behind him, it's the 77 out of Northern Colorado, the white racing driver, Luke Oxner. So funny that those two have been able to find each other. And as we talk about Luke Oxner, there's his white racing teammate in the number 78 of Brandon White. And Brandon has received a ton of coaching from Tom Long. Definitely just someone that everyone in sports car, IndyCar racing knows. His family, Long Road Racing, builds these cars as he makes his way down to pit lane. Brandon has been progressing each and every weekend. He recently knocked 2 full seconds off of his best lap at his home track back in Denver, Colorado. Not the weekend he wanted here, but again, the good news is this is race 1 of the weekend, Mark. He will be back for race 2 tomorrow morning.
One of the outstanding members of that rookie class here in the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup Series. It comes to the attention of the crew. They'll give that car a look-see. But again, he's on pit road. Issues for the 78 machine. So Ortiz, Stout, Carter, Wagner, and Lockwood. Again, the level of separation continues for that front 5. And we said it, about 3 laps ago, that you better not dismiss the 13 of Robert Nowaker. And sure enough, Tony Laporta, here he comes.
Nowaker lays down a minute 26.249. He's the quickest driver on the track, according to our timing and scoring monitors. Things up at the front of the pack, continuing to heat up as they come out of 3, now into the double right-handers 4 and 5. Ortiz shows the way. Stout right there, and Michael Carter, the rookie, reels right up to the back of the pack. Celine Roland, now your quickest driver on the track with a minute 26.1. They're getting closer and closer, Mark, to their qualifying lap times, which is impressive when you think about the fact that they're doing these laps side by side, nose to tail, bumper to bumper, and these are worn down tires. You have to start race 1 with the same BFGs that you qualified on. The pack makes their way for the back straightaway, and Ortiz, the objects in his mirror are getting closer than they appear.
Palermo continues to stalk John Dean. They've taken turns at the point of that ND1 class. Dean has the advantage for now. Problem for Celine Roland, as you suggested earlier, Tony, those are the 2 drivers that he's chasing on the course, but passing them is certainly no benefit to him in terms of the championship.
Yeah, John Dean just drops a tire rolling through turn 7 right there. That allows Hernan Palermo to reel him in just a little bit closer, and there you see it enters the frame right there. That gray and flow yellow car, the number 87 of Celine Roland. There you see him just stalking right there in the background. Let's take a look at the time. Just outside of 10 minutes to go. There's a great shot of Roland flying through. Nowaker goes quicker again, a minute 26.00. Oh man, they are all over each other. Contact Wagner, and that's the 13 of Nowaker. He just went purple. Quickest car on the track. He and Wagner get together down in 1. They're both able to continue, and now Carter forces the issue as he goes to work on pole sitter Robert Stout. Carter on the inside in 4 and 5. They're door to door. Carter trying to make it stick, and he does, but Stout wants to cross him back over. Carter into 2nd position.
That's some outstanding action for sure, and the interested spectator is the 43 of Lockwood. He wound it up a little bit when he saw that initial incident into turn number 1. Who's the big beneficiary? How about the number 4 of Brian Ortiz? He's got a little breathing room, but Tony, let's face it, with 10 minutes remaining in this session, there's still plenty of time for those guys to bunch back up and track him down.
Stout comes right back to the battle in turn 7 as they make their way onto the long curving back straightaway. Stout saw an opportunity when Carter dropped his left side BFGs in the dirt. That slowed his momentum down just enough to allow Stout to get side by side. They drag race into 10, 11, now the right-hander turn 12, and Stout has shown his way back to second position, but you said it perfectly, Mark. The beneficiary in all of this is race leader and championship point leader, Brian Ortiz. He's got the biggest lead we've seen all race for the last couple rounds. He needs this to continue as he lets the guys behind him battle. Ortiz can just put his head down and make move after move to make consistent lap after lap. This is perfect for Brian Ortiz.
Carter is going to win the drag race into turn number 1. He's going to work his way around Robert Stout, grab that position for now, and the 43 of Lockwood again closes back up to that battle, and he is heavily involved now. So we are watching the battle between Stout and Carter and Lockwood. We're going to take a look, if we can, at just what precipitated that incident into turn number 1 that involved that outstanding young rookie, Robert Noacre. There we go, Tony.
It looks like Stout's on the outside. He makes a little bit of contact with Carter, and that's what checks up the guys racing in 4th and 5th together. Lockwood makes a fantastic move, cuts right to the inside. Here's a great head-on look. So you see 2nd and 3rd, that's Stout and Carter getting side by side, and I think that causes Gresham Wagner to check up. Robert Noacre did not get the same memo. He kept his foot in it, and again, those corners right there, not the first time even today, not the first time in the PIR history for MX-5 Cup cars has there been an incident down there. So it's just an unfortunate accordion effect, Mark, I think.
Maybe a little more patience by Robert Noacre. That's a very narrow spot in which he was trying to stick that race car into turn number 1. More on that incident with Nick Yeoman on pit road.
Well, and here's an important thing to point out, Mark. Despite the contact and despite the damage, neither one of those drivers came down to pit lane. And ultimately, despite those cars being wounded, they're holding serve in 5th and 6th. Noacre, of course, has a championship he's going after, and Gresham Wagner certainly for that rookie battle. So those cars are wounded. Their chance of winning this event probably out the window. But, Mark, they are holding strong in 5th and 6th in those damaged race cars.
Well, to that point, Nick, that's a great point because, as we mentioned, Tony, in our opening comments, the top 5 cars are separated by just 12 points. So if the car's running and you're able to hold serve and at least keep the car in the top 5 or 6, it makes very good sense to do so in terms of the quest for the championship.
You're exactly right, Mark. And the reason those 2 cars are able to continue on track, as Nick just reported and pointed out, which was a great point, Nick, the reason those cars are able to continue is the hard work and dedicated construction by the folks that build these cars at Long Road Racing. Glenn Long and his team are all out here. They made the long trip from back east in Statesville, North Carolina, where these cars are built after being delivered from their factory in Japan. Those guys put so much work into making every one of these cars consistently even and, most importantly, safe. So that's why you're able to see not necessarily the worst impact ever, but a really hard racing incident like that take place, and both Robert Noacre and Gresham Wagner are able to keep it out on track and continue. That's the work of Long Road Racing.
Now, Celine Roland will check back in on his progress. We said he needed to get around Hernan Palermo and John Dean in the ND1 class to where he could start passing cars and have an opportunity to gain some points. Well, he has done that. He worked his way around 12th place running Peter Enzer, who's in the ND2 class. So Celine Roland, who fell all the way to 24th, Tony has worked his way back up into 11th, and if there is any way at all that Celine Roland can win this championship, he may point to this performance as the race in which he did that.
Mark, do I feel shades of Scott Dixon back here 1 year ago in Portland on that opening lap incident where he was able to steal a performance out of here? I mean, anyone who knows IndyCar racing remembers that moment last year when Dixon flew through the dirt, was nearly collected and taken out in that lap 1 flip featuring Marco Andretti, but he was able to keep the clutch in, keep the car running, and he salvaged a championship. Most people would tell you it was won, not lost here in Portland, Oregon. Now, if Roland can get the championship, or at least have his name called as one of the championship top 3 when we get to Monterey, California and our year-end banquet, he will look back on this performance at Portland International Raceway. He's got one more position to crack the top 10, and after this, all of the cars in front of him are ND2. So to your point earlier, every car that he passes is a championship point to the good. He has got prime real estate in front of him. This is a great battle right here. That's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Brian Lockwood has just come out of absolutely nowhere this weekend here in Portland, Oregon. He is knocking on the back door of Robert Stout. That's for podium position. Stout pulls out to get a little bit of air on the nose of that number 28. Michael Carter sitting 2nd. Now Lockwood pulls out. I doubt he's going to try anything right here, but we've seen crazier moves down in 1. Lockwood to the inside of Stout, and he thinks better of it and uses that brake pedal pretty well to keep both those cars running through the corner safely, but just that little bit of side-by-side mark, and look, Michael Carter's already got a sizable lead over those two.
I wonder if maybe race control might have a chat with these drivers before the race tomorrow, because, Tony, they are going to the right side of that curbing at the entrance to turn number 1, and I don't know that race control necessarily is a big fan of
No, you're absolutely right. They're going almost completely 4 wheels inside the apex curbing at turn 1, and I gotta say, I was here last year at PIR with Road to Indy and MX-5 Cup, but a little while ago, I was able to take a lap around the track with Sunday Group Management's Matt Cleary and Matty Komar, and I stopped and really paid attention to the track. I don't think people understand. You can't tell on the monitors right now, Mark, to those watching at home, how narrow the track at PIR here really is. Now, I can't imagine what it's like going side by side in an NTT Indy car, but these big, wide MX-5 Cup cars, they take up a lot of track, and I hope people understand that this track is not nearly as wide as it looks on the camera. It is an extremely narrow course, so when you see them get door to door like that down in 1, it's much more intense than you think. That's why our voices get so high when they do that.
Robert Noaker and Gresham Wagner, we see them slugging it out. That is the 5th position. And don't adjust your screen, folks. That is the badly damaged race car of Robert Noaker. And you know that's got to affect the handling a little bit, but that gives you an idea just how fast that race car is.
That's insane. The fact that both those cars right there you see him, Gresham Wagner in the 5. He still scored in 5th place, and Robert Noaker in the 13th. Those cars are banged up as they are right there, and they're still out there going for it. Noaker needs to. He's got 2 wins on the season, and he is still an outside shot at winning this championship. My favorite part about today, just so you guys know, is that in about an hour after this race is over, all these drivers are heading over to the IndyCar Fan Village, and we're going to sit them down side by side for an autograph session.
That's great.
So if you guys want to see some awkward conversation take place, come over and get an autograph, because these guys are all going to be sitting shoulder to shoulder. It's going to be a hoot.
But while the laps wind down and the time winds down about 3.5 minutes, we'll keep an eye on that battle for second most assuredly. But I'm sure you want to thank Battery Tender, your title sponsor of this series, and all the great work that they do to promote these young drivers through this series.
Absolutely, and the folks at Battery Tender, they attend many of these races. They're not here this weekend. I'm quite sure the family are sitting at home watching this race, and they're being rewarded with some really great racing. Brian Ortiz has a lead of some 2 seconds, just over 2 seconds at the moment. And that's very unusual in Battery Tender MX-5 Cup racing. This battle for second place is outstanding, with probably, what do we have left? 2, 3, just under 3 minutes, so probably 2 laps. And also of note, Sarah Montgomery is still in, or is holding that 3rd place in that Team 1 Logistics sponsored 6 Sideways MX-5 in the ND1 class. So if Sarah should make it to the podium, she will indeed be the first woman to stand on a podium, a Battery Tender MX-5 Cup podium. And I'm quite sure the Battery Tender folks will celebrate that in very large degree.
Yeah, and Mo, absolutely an exciting opportunity to see Sarah do that. I love you talking about the Battery Tender folks. Michael Prelick, his family, they're such good people. It's a bummer, honestly, that they're not here. I had such a great time at Road America with Mike and his family. We're very grateful for the support they put in. Another notable name that is not here in the paddock this weekend in Portland is John Doonan. In my opinion, the happiest, or at least the best man I've ever met in motorsports. He's not here this weekend. He's actually back home. He's just gotten back from taking his son AJ and moving him up into college for his freshman year at Augustana College. AJ is going to major in psychology and communications. John Doonan is the guy that makes all this happen. And Mo, I know you work side by side, shoulder by shoulder with him all year long. I'm grateful of the efforts John puts into this series and into racing as a whole. We are bummed he's not here. We miss him. I'm sure he's back home watching as well right now. But most importantly, I'm happy that he was able to get an off weekend to be with his son AJ and to be a part of a really important moment in his life, getting him up to college.
Well, you know, it's a great opportunity to talk about family. We talk about the family in this Battery Tender MX-5 Cup series and the familial nature of the paddock. Yes, these guys will bang door handles, but it really is one big family. The Prelick family represent that. They come. It's not a corporate entity, although it is, but they come to the races as a family, and we love that. John is at home. Best wishes, John, and AJ with his family, spending a weekend with his family. I'm not shoulder to shoulder with John because he's quite a bit taller than me.
True.
But certainly somebody I have worked very, very closely with. And you're right, John is the kingpin of Mazda Motorsports and one of the guys who recognized that this series was something that needed to be promoted and developed as a driver development series.
Celine Roland continues to pick off the positions. The most recent one is able to get by the number 48 of Zach Lee. That puts him into the top 10.
That's insane. This is going to go down as a huge weekend in Roland's championship for 2019. Whether he gets the top spot or not, they're going to look back at round 9 in Portland as a huge weekend.
And what that means is, despite the incident early in the race, all 5 of our championship contenders are back inside the top 10.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a huge rebound, certainly most notably for Celine Roland. So we see the white flag flying, and the advantage is just a bit of a rarity to see a 4 or 5 or 6 car length advantage in this series. Still been a very competitive race. We are numbering close to 200 in passes with the 31 laps that we have completed, but you get the feeling that we've entered that portion on the day to where Carter, Lockwood, Stout, none of those drivers can win it. It would simply be a matter of Brian Ortiz putting a wheel wrong and him losing it. And that's not something that Brian Ortiz is certainly known for. And what a line that he is drawing in the sand. He comes in with a very, very slim 2-point lead, Brian Ortiz over Celine Roland, Robert Stout, Kemper, and Nowaker. All of those drivers are behind him. So Ortiz, Carter, Lockwood, the top 3 in Indy 2. And Tony will let you take him home, and we'll keep an eye on Indy 1 as well. John Dean leads Palermo, and Sarah Montgomery making a strong bid to get on the podium here at Portland International Raceway. Take him home, Tony.
They make their way through the final corner. Brian Ortiz's team, Copeland Motorsports, was not very happy, and neither is Brian Lockwood going to be, as he throws away a near podium in the final corner. But Brian Ortiz's team was not very happy coming to this race with the decisions by the technical staff. I don't think they're going to mind it as Ortiz pumps his fists in the air. Ortiz draws first blood at Portland International Raceway. He wins round 9 as Michael Carter has a career best second place finish right there. Robert Stout goes from the pole position back to third. We keep our eyes open for the result in ND1. Here comes Celine Roland. He was able to rebound quite well in this race. John Dean making his way down the back straightaway as he's trying to hold off Hernan Palermo. Palermo trying to get what would be his second win of the season, and he's able to do that, it looks like, as they make their way to the finish line. Dean flashes the lights across the line. Dean picks up the victory. How about this battle for the podium, though, coming down to the line in ND1? John Dean gets it. Hernan Palermo second, and in third place on the podium in ND1 for the first time. It looks like we're going to have a young woman stand on the podium.
And the other thing to note is
Sarah Montgomery gets it.
And coming off the last corner, one of our championship contenders, Drake Kemper, had a problem. That car stopped on its way to the... He just crossed the finish line now in, looks like 16th place. Not a great finish to the race for Drake Kemper.
And before I take off, guys, to go do victory lane, I do just want to mention a quick note as we head to celebrate round 9 of the 2019 season. Your winners, John Dean in ND1 and Brian Ortiz in ND2. Champagne will not be sprayed in victory lane in memory of the driver that we lost earlier today in the F2 wreck over at Spa. But again, an impressive weekend right there for the Copeland Motorsports driver. Quickest in both practices yesterday, Mark, and he's able to score the win after starting second today in round 9. Ortiz is your victor.
We'll let you scoot, Tony, and we will see you tomorrow morning when you join us here on MazdaMotorsports.com at 8:25. Yes, that's right, folks. Doubleheader weekends, because we get to do this all day, and we get to do this all over again tomorrow, we should say, on Sunday. There's a look at your unofficial results in race number 1. Brian Ortiz, your winner. Michael Carter finishes second. Robert Stout is third. Gresham Wagner is fourth. Robert Nowaker is fifth. Celine Roland had fallen to 24th and rebounded to finish that 6th position once he cleared those ND1 cars. Alex Bachara in the 7th position. Zach Lee 8th. Peter Enzer 9th. And John Dean finishes in the top 10 overall in winning the ND1 class. What a ride he gave that car today.
And before we hear from the winners, whoever at Team 1 Logistics made the decision to put their company's name and sponsor Sarah Montgomery did it at exactly the right time, an inspired decision. She gets the first podium in Battery Tender MX-5 Cup Series history for a female driver, and we are absolutely thrilled about that. And thrilled for Sarah.
So many incentive programs are up for grabs and opportunities for these drivers in this series. Alex Basher, the 33, tell us more about what he gets, what it means to get that Hard Charger Award.
So Alex Basher is the winner of the Battery Tender Hard Charger Award for this race. It's handed out at every race, and it's awarded to the driver who passes the most cars for position during the course of the race. And the driver gets a check for $1,000, but also the crew chief of the car, recognizing that there's more than just drivers here. The crews are working very, very hard on these cars. And also the crew chief of the car gets a check from Battery Tender for $1,000. So congrats to Alex Bashura for the Battery Tender Hard Charger Award for this race 1 from Portland.
Let's hear from the winners, Nick Yeoman.
But a fantastic run for Brian Ortiz. Congratulations. Got the lead early and then able to hold on.
Yeah, the team have brought a great car. I feel very comfortable at this track as well. I knew we could do it. We have a slump in the summer, but now is the time to do it. We're leading the points. We just need to do it again this weekend, and then 2 more times in Laguna, and we'll be the champion.
A year ago, I know you were kind of frustrated with how things went here in Portland. How big is this from a redemption standpoint?
Well, we won. That's first. Last year I made a mistake in the first corner and ruined our chances to win as well. Last year I think we had the opportunity as well, but this year we did a perfect race, and it was awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Brian Ortiz picks up the win in Indy 2. We'll find our winner in Indy 1 here momentarily, guys.
He gave a very easy formula, Mo. Let's face it. I mean, you win tomorrow, and then you take care of business at WeatherTech Raceway, and you win the championship. It's just that, and it's an old adage. We talk about it, too, in the NTT IndyCar Series with the battle among the top 4 for that championship. I mean, points are points, and they're important, but if you win, the points take care of it, don't they?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So he knows the track here, and when he goes to Laguna Seca, WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, he knows that track, although 2 years ago when we raced there, he ended up upside down in the gravel trap. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's go to Nick, who has John Dean.
Yeah, fantastic podium in Indy 1. John Dean picks up another win. Talk about this race, because you had to hold off Hernan Palermo.
Oh man, it was so hot. I didn't hydrate enough before I got in the car. Started cramping up a little bit, but we drove really clean together. He made a bunch of really good passes on me, and I was able to get back by. And he ended up getting dropped back in traffic there. But we had a great battle going, and I'm just so happy to be here with my teammate Sarah Montgomery, and we're both here supporting Harrison Contracting. I just can't be happier as a driver and a team owner.
Congratulations. And Sarah, how about that, a podium? Congratulations on a great run.
Thank you. I have literally wanted this all year. I've been dreaming about this since I first started MX-5 Cup, and for Six Sideways to give me the car to do this, I'm just mind blown. I'm trying to hold back my tears right now. First female on the podium ever. I am just absolutely thrilled and honored to be here, for sure.
A little history on pit lane and some great stories here at Portland, fellas.
She's a great story for sure. Congratulations to her. Again, first female on the podium in series history. That's a great story. Hopefully she can back that up with a strong finish again tomorrow. Again, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to do it all again. So join us at 8:25 Pacific time. And that's 11:25 Eastern. So join us here, Mazda Motorsport. And the great thing is, if you missed this one or joined it late, you want to go back and see what unfolded at the start, Mo, you can always go back and watch these races. They're posted for you to watch again and again and again.
On Mazda's YouTube channel, I'm reliably told this race we just saw will be up on Mazda's YouTube channel tonight. And then by late tomorrow night, we'll have race 2 up. And yes, you can go back and watch the whole season. As we head into the next, the closing round, we've a race tomorrow here, and then in 3 weeks we go to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. For anyone who wants to study the season so far as we go into that championship finale, all of these races are up on Mazda's YouTube channel.
We do want to thank the contributions of Nick Yeoman doing a great job on pit road today. Tony Laporta in the broadcast booth. For Mo Murray, this is Mark Janes. So long for now from Portland International Raceway.